I mean, should we be surprised? Were you surprised?
So that's actually my first question. Were you surprised? You're the one a little more plugged in than I am. I got to be honest. When I saw the Shams tweet about Kyrie and the impasse, and then the Lakers and Knicks are mentioned, something triggered that. It's like, I've heard this before, and I didn't know if it was just from like one of the pods. Well, yes, 2019 was a time, but like, if it was recently like on the playbacks or when we were off mic, or whether it was one of the national pods, I couldn't tell if it was like people that I'm close to, like you, or whether it was someone like, had you heard this before today is my point.
Look, I let me choose my words carefully here.
Okay.
Figuring out the Knicks and what their intentions are and what they want to do is not rocket science. I think sometimes, and I have been victim to this every time there has been a regime change, where, sometimes we like to think that the next group of people, they are the ones who will be holier than thou. And they are the ones that will have certain standards that they will not bend or break or go beneath to acquire talent, which, as we know from professional sports, watching sports, it's all about acquiring talent. I don't care what team you root for. I don't care what sport you love. I'll be able to find somewhere in that transaction log over the years a moment where that team, whatever, who didn't matter who the GM was, who the owner is, where that team looked at a situation and said, you know what? Can't pass this one up. We're going to go for this. And the Knicks are not above that. So the notion that an organization that has been as star driven, I mean, certainly as any franchise outside the Lakers over the last 75 years. The difference is the Lakers have had a lot more success with it, but the Knicks have made just as overt efforts to bring stars into their ecosystem, really ever since the early days of their existence. Which was fun homework to go back and do, researching top 75 players in their history. But they've always gone for stuff, where it was just like, we got to get a star in here. We got to get a star in here. Hasn't often worked out. And now, so this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, did I have any inside info that this was going to be a thing? Maybe not really, but I was not surprised in the least. What do me and Jeremy get on here and talk about literally every fucking week? What do we talk about? It's the same thing. Do you think they're not having the same conversations? And now we should note, Ian Begley, in a follow-up report to the Shams report, reported that there are, I think, something, I don't want to mince his words, but there are members of the organization who do not think it's a good idea to bark up the Kyrie Irving tree, and I should hope so. What you want to jump in?
No, just like that is a consistent theme with this front office. It seems that there's
mixed opinion,
this side and that side on every single issue, which honestly they're supposed to be. And then Leon, based off of the discourse amongst his cabinet, then makes a decision.
I think, and I'm in the process of writing something for Tuesday's newsletter that's going to basically, get at the heart of this. I think with this front office, and we've been fond of saying this as well, value is really the key driver in a lot of their decision making, if not all of their decision making. So for me, it really does come down to, well, if the Knicks could somehow get Kyrie Irving without giving up anything that they don't, anything they really care about, or giving up very little of what they care about, do I think they would do it? In a heartbeat, I think they would do it. And I think they would acquire the talent and they would figure out the rest later. If it's going to cost them real stuff, that's different.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that the mandate for players and entertainers is gone. And like game 1 against the Celtics did happen. And like, so like
we didn't need
the
game 1 though,
basketball
Andrew.
reasons.
We didn't need game 1. Like, just again, for anybody who is just despises him as a person, I'll get to that in a moment. But just as a basketball player, just look at the numbers. Yeah.
I'm not even saying like he had a 61-point game or whatever, a 60-point game against the Magic this year. Like my point was going to be like the basketball reasons are aplenty to go get a Kyrie Irving, obviously, you know, and it's because he can only play road games mandate anymore. Like you'd really have to be somebody that people don't like if universally I could not find like an opinion out there that was like, yes, go get Kyrie Irving, New York Knicks, which is why I like you know how difficult it is for Knicks Twitter to agree universally on something. And like, I'm privy to the fact that Knicks Twitter is not everybody, but I don't know a Knicks fan or Knicks person. Like, I don't know anybody that has an interest in the Knicks that was like, go get him, which says a lot about how much Kyrie has soured just everybody on him. That a talent like that, as we both agree, the Knicks would go get. I don't think I've seen anything like this. And this isn't like a Deshaun Watson thing where you don't want that different kind of distraction. I was about to say Kyrie Irving's not that. But it's different, you know.
It is not the Deshaun Watson situation in that if a 9-year-old in Tulsa, Oklahoma asks dad for a new Kyrie Irving Knicks jersey next year, dad may have some personal misgivings about having an Irving jersey in their house. It's not going to be a flat out no, which is going to be the case if like some kid in I would hope and guess if some kid in Cleveland asks for a Deshaun Watson jersey for Christmas this year, especially the fact that he may never play basketball or football again.
Especially if, you know, kid in Cleveland asks mom for a new Deshaun Watson jersey.
Here's my point. I have 3 questions for you. If Kyrie Irving gets traded to the Knicks tomorrow, will his Knicks jersey, be in the top 10 highest selling NBA jerseys next year?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. If Kyrie Irving gets traded to the Knicks and they're a decent team, we're not even going to talk about the basketball because we're not going to talk about the basketball part of it. Let's say they're a decent team. We'll go on that assumption. Will MSG sell out every night?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're going to sell out if Derrick Rose is a starting point guard.
And if Leon Rose and Worldwide West and Brock Aller and Walt Barron and whoever else is there making decisions figure out a way to get one more piece in the door, and this team, a team with Kyrie Irving, goes on to, I don't know, win a playoff series, win a couple playoff series. At that point, let's put Knicks Twitter aside, because I think Knicks Twitter is about 5-10% of Knicks fandom.
Yeah.
What percentage of average Knicks fans do you think are going to be upset about that situation?
I honestly wonder if now it does come down a lot to Kyrie not telling everybody how much smarter he is than them, but like we'll all be forgiven if like winning rehabilitates so much in any situation. So like you go through different reports about when Sprewell came here and his reputation when he first became a Knick after what happened in Golden State, and you know how quickly a run to the finals rehabilitated him, and he's beloved by this fan base across the board.
It's my favorite Knick.
So I wonder if Kyrie does the same, like honestly gets the Knicks to the second round and then gives whoever a run for their money in that second round. We will be like, man, we got one over on the Nets. He's our guy. And I wonder if that rehabilitates him, which I want to be clear. The rehabilitation, I don't know if it's tough to say rehabilitation because Kyrie's never choked his coach. Kyrie's not like, it's just a person I don't want to root for. Having said that, the example of the kid in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and asking dad for a Kyrie jersey, among kids, he is the guy. You know, this as a teacher. I'm sure you see Kyrie stuff all the time.
It was him and Steph.
Yeah.
And I'll throw LeBron in there. Him, Steph, and LeBron over the 7 years that I've been in the classroom. Those are the 3 when you factor in sneakers, when you factor in jerseys, when you factor in backpacks, you have all the different shit.
Yeah.
Top 3.
So he's really got to be like that much of a I don't even know what the word is to use, whether it's a clown or whatever, but the way he rubs people the wrong way.
And again,
to supersede all the basketball stuff is amazing, you know?
So here's the issue, right? If we were talking about Dwight Howard, not late career Dwight Howard, whose talent made him not, well, although teams keep signing him, but for argument's sake, he's not worth the trouble, and he's a noted clown.
Mm-hmm.
Dwight Howard was a clown as far back as when he was in Orlando. That, you know, you dealt with that, right? If you were the Magic or when the Rockets acquired him, or even when the Lakers acquired, like, you dealt with that. We're not talking about a clown or a fool. We are talking about a fool. Let me be very blunt about that. He's a fool.
Earth is round.
Yeah. Actually, let me be even more clear. And I'm not going to get political on the intro to a fucking basketball podcast, but
okay.
Fools are it's annoying to have to deal with ignorant people. I don't like ignorance. I don't care as you well know, I don't care for ignorance. There's only one thing worse than being ignorant, and that's knowing better and ignoring it. I believe Kyrie Irving is a smart human being. I believe he's really smart, actually. And I think I don't think he uses his power for good. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just leave it there. As far as the basketball component, and that's why I want to push back on one thing you said before, which is that the basketball aspect of it, I don't think you can separate Kyrie Irving, the basketball player, from Kyrie Irving, the person, because basketball, and we saw it last year play out with the Nets. And I mean, you see it play out every year, like, in terms of the teams that have what it takes to win a title. Like, there is a certain amount of togetherness that is required, and like faith in the fact that your brother is going to be there to fight the next war with you. And I understand the mandate is lifted and all that, but like, Kyrie Irving's not, like, who wants Kyrie Irving in a foxhole with him, and who is going to, and like, you need to have that foxhole mentality if you're going to go and win 4 playoff rounds. Like, yes, LeBron did it with Kyrie, and that was, I think, LeBron did it. Maybe we should just stop there. LeBron did it. The second greatest player of all time figured out a way to do it. After Draymond hit him in the nuts and got suspended, LeBron did it. Man, what if Kyrie never gets a chance to hit that shot? How are we talking about him as a player then?
I've heard the comp before. Like, if LeBron never goes back to Cleveland, are we talking about Kyrie the way we talk about Russ or like Stephon Marbury way back in the day?
I think there's he's more talented than Marbury, but I think there's Marbury potential there, maybe just to an elevated degree. That's my thing, right? Is you can't just have if we separate out everything else, and then there are actual basketball issues. Like, he's someone who doesn't seem to want to play defense anymore. That's kind of a big deal. It's not nothing.
So we've talked about how, like, our reaction to it would be and why we don't want it to happen. Now there's the other side of, like, is this really in play? Are the Knicks just being mentioned in a leverage play as part of a report? Because the Lakers make sense. They have a contract in Russ that they're trying to move, I think, as well. And obviously their windows now that a Kyrie Irving trade would make sense, you know?
I think it behooves Irving's camp to mention the Knicks for this reason. And shout out to Fred Katz, who wrote a really nice article on this on Monday. The Knicks, it would take moving heaven and earth to get under the cap to be able to sign Kyrie to a max contract, but they can do it. Like, there's enough teams out there that have cap space. The Thunder have cap space left that they have until the draft, until July 1st, or June 30th, whatever it is, to use. I don't know what it would cost. It would cost the Knicks, 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round, whatever it would cost the Knicks. That possibility is out there. if the Knicks go away as a place that Kyrie wants to go, and the Nets are not stupid, they know he's not going to sign with Orlando or Detroit or San Antonio or one of these other teams, then it only leaves the Clippers and Lakers. And the Clippers and Lakers, the only way you do it is via trade. So I think it, at least mentioning the Knicks, does put a little bit more power in Irving's hand. Is that the only reason the Knicks are mentioned? I have no idea, but I do think it's smart to mention the Knicks for that reason.
I think, look, if any Knicks fan that panicked because we saw a lot of the reaction, shout out to, I don't know the Twitter user's name, but responded to Jeremy. I think quote tweeted Jeremy like, cap or no cap the Kyrie Irving plan, and like Jeremy responded with no. I responded with how about no, and just again the reaction that our mentions got of like, please say psych to this report. Nothing has changed. We are like, even you and I are figuring out how to talk about this week. Like, do we now go get a Nets guy? Do we go emergency live stream because of this report? And it was just like, nothing's changed just yet. There's still about the draft this week. The Jaden Ivey stuff is very real.
Well, so I'm happy you said that, and that'll be our last point before we get to Seth. Here's where I ultimately land on this. Like, you know me, I try to look at this stuff as objectively as possible. I'm not capable of putting my personal feelings about Kyrie aside. If it was a smart deal, I would get on here and I would say, you know what? It's a smart deal, even with the risks of him as like a human being and like quitter and like all of the other, he's at risk to go and, I don't know, spend 3 months in Tibet or whatever bullshit.
He will have nuked his third straight situation on the way out. Like Cleveland was competing for titles. Boston thought they were competing for titles. Yes. Brooklyn thought they were competing for titles. Why would you want to trade everything for this guy?
But even if it's not everything, even if they made a deal where it was like, even factoring in those risks, it was a smart on paper deal. I'd get on here and I'd be like, okay, if you're Leon Rose, you don't have to do this, but like, I get it. And I would try my best to put my personal feelings about Kyrie Irving, the human being, aside. One, I don't think that that's going to be possible because you're not going to be able to lowball your way into this one if you're the Knicks. That's number one. Number two, there's a guy on the board in Jaden Ivey who we just talked about him for a while, so we're not going to do a whole Jaden Ivey thing, but like, I don't know what the cost is going to be to go up and get him, but I feel pretty confident that it's not going to cost as much as it would either to do a sign and trade with the Nets for Kyrie Irving or to move the salary to sign Kyrie Irving outright. And if you're the Knicks and you're like sitting here and wondering, well, okay, when are we doing this big move? What's the best big move to do? I want to be very clear about this. Jaden Ivey might not be a good basketball player in the NBA. We have no freaking clue because he hasn't. There have been higher picks than he's going to go that have gone to the NBA and just failed. There have been super athletic guys who have gone to the NBA and just like failed. That said, I know what I'd do if I were them. And boy, man, there's too much smoke out there with Ivy to not be. I don't know how realistic it is. I have zero idea how realistic it is. They are trying though. They're trying.
There's something that Berman said in the conversation he had with Chris, and it was like a hint about how he's CAA, how Jaden Ivey's agent is a CAA client, and how like suddenly Obi Toppin fell to 8 when Obi Toppin was in that draft, when it was mocked that he might go to 4. And the Knicks like moved down or like just they traded for 22. So that way, if they had to move from 8 and 22 to
23, but who's counting?
Thank you. Necessary correction. 8 and 23 to a spot that they would have to get him at 6 or get him at 7. They would. And it never happened because like CAA worked their magic and these teams want to have good relationships with CAA. So they'll leave this guy alone. I don't see Jaden Ivey dropping 11 spots in order for that to happen. Or I guess 7 spots in order for that to happen. So he's there at 11. So look, his quotes today, his interviews that he gave today about how he hasn't worked out for Sacramento and like he realistically sees himself like as New York as a possibility. The Bondi article,
it's the way he said it.
Yeah,
like he left no doubt. I mean, I'm comfortable reading between the lines. He sounded like a guy who wants to be a Knick.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a real thing that could happen, which is why I will shamelessly plug the most recent cap or no cap that John and Jeremy did. Jaden Ivey plan. The John Collins rumors to the Kings were also out there, which were fascinating when you look at Jeremy's hypothetical trade that was out there today. Jeremy's going to be doing a cap rules everything around me cream this week. I'm sure you're going to berate him with hypothetical Kyrie stuff, but also hypothetical Jaden Ivey stuff on Wednesday. And this could turn out to be a pretty eventful draft night for us, John.
I think it will be. It is just, man. It's we've had Donovan Mitchell, we've had Jalen Brunson, it's Jaden Ivey, it's Kyrie Irving. I mean,
it's all gonna end with Malcolm Brogdon.
Listen, I shouldn't say that. I just want it noted for the record. That was also in the Athletic report today that the Knicks are interested. One of the teams potentially interested in Malcolm Brogdon. I still do not believe they would give up 11 straight up to trade for Malcolm Brogdon. But
what if it is all a smokescreen and this name I keep teasing you with that the Knicks end up with Russ?
We should do for our what's the next? Well, we got Was coming on later this week. Well, maybe the next intro we'll count down our 10 most likely starting point guard options.
Most likely or least likely?
Oh,
that's where Russell Westbrook comes in.
Man.
Can I ask one last question before we go?
Sure, yeah, please.
So, personal feelings aside, if the Knicks end up in some type of deal for Kyrie Irving, and then that's the Julius Randle trade.
So the Randle part of this is fascinating, and I actually don't know. I mean, literally flip a coin in terms of do the Knicks trading for Kyrie Irving make it more likely that Julius stays or less likely that Julius stays? And obviously those questions, that's all intertwined because Randle, I'll say this. I don't think it's insane to think that the Nets would want Julius Randle in a trade if Kyrie was coming this way. I mean, maybe they don't. I don't think it's insane to put that out there. So basically you're asking me would I feel better about the trade if Randle goes
if
out?
That's how Julius Randle's the Knicks get a point guard, Obi starting at the 4. Like the Nets were a fun team that first year with Atkinson when Kyrie was doing his stuff and he just had a bunch of like LeVert and Dinwiddie and Jared Allen around him.
It would be an easier sell.
Okay. All right. We've gotten to easier sell, folks. How do you see this playing out, by the way? What do you eventually see happening?
The Clippers thing is interesting because the Clippers have real stuff. And like, I don't know. We just saw a team win an NBA championship with one. We don't need to get into this whole superstar, blah, blah, blah. Like,
go follow us on go sign up for Patreon if you want.
I mean, look, it's Steph and everybody around him played their role. Can we, right?
Yes, I agree.
We agree on that? Okay.
Yes. Why do you hate Andrew Wiggins? Go ahead.
We just saw a team win a championship like that. You know, again, I don't know what the Clippers would put on the table. Maybe they don't want any part of Kyrie Irving. They have 2-shot creators, you know? But if they did, and I think they could put together a real package. And the other thing about the Nets is the Nets are thin. They don't have depth. So like, and they have a bunch of open roster spots. So like a 4-for-1 trade, like you could do that. You could do a 3-for-1 trade. You could do a 4-for-1 trade. In addition to the fact that the Clippers do have some future draft equity that they could toss in the deal to maybe seal it if they wanted to.
How far do they have to go? Because what about the Paul George trade? Don't they?
So it's funny how things get old. The most future pick they've traded away is the 2026 first rounder. So if they wanted to, they could trade for it. Just as an example, they could trade a pick swap in 2027 and then a first round pick in 2028 with an option to defer to 2029.
Okay.
If they wanted to. So essentially you could give Brooklyn, or any team for that matter, the rights to control 3 years worth of your draft when Kyrie Irving and Paul George may no longer be Clippers. Like
right.
they could make a very good offer if they want to. And I think if they did that and then you give those picks to Brooklyn and maybe that's enough draft ammo for Brooklyn to make like one more move. Like I don't know. If the Clippers wanted to do something like that, I would think about that if I were Brooklyn, but I'm not Brooklyn. So
can I just read a box score to you before we go to Seth?
Sure.
So this was on June 7th, 2021 in the Barclays Center. Brooklyn 125, Bucks 86. Giannis was a minus 22, Chris Middleton a minus 30, and Drew Holiday a minus 27. Durant had 32 points on 18 shots. Kyrie 22 on 17. The Nets won by 39 points at home to take a 2-0 lead on Milwaukee Bucks. And
unbelievable.
Since that moment, they lost 4 of the next 5 to Milwaukee. And then James Harden asked for a trade, and Kyrie and his stance against science and all of the things that have happened to that franchise since. How quickly things can turn in this league. I'll
say this. I'm not going to say like the Nets would be the greatest team never to like the greatest never was in NBA history, because I would really have to think about that. And just even off the top of my head, like the Nash Suns, like that was a fucking team, like capital T team. Like they were great and they never won. And that's a shame. But I will say, just in terms of like perception, like league-wide perception in terms of like what this team could achieve and what they likely would achieve, I do think it would be the greatest disappointment in NBA history.
It's up there. I mean, the amount of things that they traded away, like all the culture that KD said he went there for, and then all of a sudden Atkinson fired. All the young kids traded for Harden. Then Harden traded for Ben Simmons. Yeah. Like all that's gone. You know, they mortgaged and look, if you read the Sullivan book, like they basically gave these 3 guys the keys to running a basketball franchise. You want to talk about player empowerment. This is player employment. They basically said, you now run the Nets. You now own and run a franchise. And it seems like it's completely backfired on him.
And again, it all has to go into the conversation about Kyrie. Mm-hmm. You cannot separate that part of it from, you can't just say, take that out of it. Let's just focus on the basketball. I can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it, which is why me, you, most of Knicks Twitter, it seems like our stance against Irving, you know, people around the league may look at it as like a little ridiculous. Like, you're the Knicks and you're saying you don't want this guy. Give me a fucking break. But like, it's just not a good idea.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. All right. That was fun. Glad we got all that out.
Yeah. Therapy sessions here.
Therapy session. Kyrie Irving therapy session.